Hey kids, it's Mariah again. We're gonna do some more cooking is coping today. First things first, gotta have our tasty beverage. I know I seem like I drink a lot when I'm cooking. It's because I do. I don't drink a lot, I just drink when I'm cooking a lot. So I like to drink whatever goes along with what I'm cooking. We're making a really simple skillet dish today with some peppers and onions, and that goes great with a beer. So we're having a beer. First things first. Alrighty, getting everything ready. Again, it's great to have all of your ingredients out and ready before you get started. That way you're not rushing all around the kitchen trying to find things. I want to teach you a little trick about peppers. This recipe that we're doing today calls for bell peppers. I'm going to use a yellow, a red, and a green, like a stoplight. But you look at the bottom of the bell peppers and you see this has 3 lobes. All of mine have 3 lobes for a reason. I picked them out that way. You can get the 3 lobe or the 4 lobe, excuse me, can't speak already. You can get the 3 lobe or the 4 lobe. And I get the 3 lobe because they actually have fewer seeds in them and I can't stand bell pepper seeds. I have another trick that helps me avoid those seeds as much as possible. When you cut your bell pepper, instead of cutting it straight through the middle, right through where all the seeds are, cut off to the side. And when you cut off to the side, you get a slice that leaves the seeds pretty much intact in the middle. So I do that all around the edge. Now there's a few seeds in there and that's okay, but it's still better than having to deal with all the seeds in the middle. And don't worry, I don't want to waste, so we cut off the little bottom edge. And if the top had had a lot on it, we would have cut off the top edge as well. So again, we're going to cut down the sides, avoiding the seeds that are in the middle. It's easier after you get the first little lobe off because then you can look inside and you can see where the seeds are and you can cut just to the outside of those seeds so that you only have a little bit to clean off of your board, not a whole bunch of seeds in the middle. Now that we have our peppers lobbed off of the seeds, you're just going to cut those in some long slices. I just take my knife and slice down. You want to do this on the inside of the pepper because the outside of the pepper is tougher, and if your knife isn't sharp enough, it can get caught on that outside and it just doesn't cut as easily. So if you just do your little strips on the inside like that, it works out great. And I do this quite often, so I'm pretty quick at it, but if you're not quick at it, don't worry about it. It's a learning process and you just get better at it as you go. Now sometimes you don't like this white part in here, this membrane, so after you cut your slice, if you want to just slice a little bit of that out. If you have pet birds like we do, they like to have that as a little treat. So usually Alana runs in there and feeds them something, and usually they're making noise while I'm cooking because they know that I'm chopping up some vegetables and they want to get in on that action. They like that veggie action. Almost done. And I cut that one in half, but who cares because it all goes in our tummy. Alrighty, sometimes I get quick and messy. The next ingredient we need for our sausage, peppers, and grains is an onion. So I've got a big yellow onion here. I cut off one end, cut off the other end, slice it down the middle. Peel off the outside. I'm terrible about peeling onions. Sometimes I get a hold of the skin and sometimes I get a hold of the first layer of the onion, but thank goodness that onions have layers, kind of like Shrek, and we can just make do with whatever layers are left to us. There we are. We're just going to do long, thin strips of the onions as well. So the same with the knife. You just take it in there and you just do some little slicing. And you can also cut down like this instead of scraping it across. Again, like I told you the last episode, you've got to be comfortable with your utensils in your kitchen. You do it the way you want to do it. There is no food police unless it has to do with preservatives. And I'm sure I'll think of a couple of other big no-nos. But as far as chopping your vegetables, I don't care how you get the job done. Just get the job done. So we've got some strips of onion, some strips of pepper. We're going to do some garlic. Again, there's never enough garlic. I think you all have seen me whack it and chop it before. So we'll come back when I have it all chopped up and not put you through that again. Uh-oh, you caught me. I'm crying because of the onions and I needed a sip. Next ingredient, we have garlic, sliced onions, sliced peppers, and then we have some smoked sausage. We're just gonna slice up our smoked sausage and prep it up as well. They don't have to be pretty fancy diagonal slices, just get the job done. This is really a very quick dinner. You can pull it together on a weeknight. It's actually a Tuesday night for me, and I have already worked a full 8-hour day, come home, went for a 20-minute brisk walk because that's another way that I cope. And now I'm here in the kitchen getting dinner all prepped up, and we will have it on the table and ready to eat in less than 30 minutes. Now that all our prep's done, we're over here at the stove. Could easily be a one-pan meal, but I used to, simply because I like to use my cast iron skillet for my sausage so that it gets a nice brown sear on the sausage. So I have a little bit of olive oil heating in the bottom of the pan, and I have my large skillet. This thing, I swear I use it almost every day. So invest in a nice deep skillet with a solid heavy bottom, and you can't ever go wrong. All right, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna toss in our sausage. The oil's not quite hot enough yet, it's not sizzling yet, but it will be. Cast iron takes a little longer to heat up, but it'll hold your heat longer, so keep an eye on it. So we've got our sausage in here, it's gonna start to brown. Now this recipe is sausage, peppers, and grains. It's a sausage, pepper, and grains skillet. In my house, we call it carny skillet. Because here in just a couple of minutes, when I put the garlic, peppers, and onions into this olive oil, my entire house is going to smell like the sausage, peppers, and onions that are cooked at a carnival. And I love that smell. So we get really excited around here when it's carny skillet time. So I've got my oil heating up here. I can hear my sausage starting to do a little bit of a sizzle. I'm gonna go ahead and see if this one's ready to go. Get my onions in there. Yep, it's ready. Sizzle. Don't throw your bowl in, please. Just your onions. All right. Onions and peppers will cook at about the same time, so I'm just gonna go ahead and toss my peppers in too. Isn't that gorgeous? I love food that's colorful. And actually, if you eat the rainbow, you're healthier. So we've got beautiful colors here that are providing a bunch of vitamins. Don't ask me specifically what they are. They're just good for us. And we've got our sausage starting to get a little sizzle on here. And here in just a few minutes, I'll flip these over and we'll have a nice brown on them. And we'll just continue to stir these as they cook. Our peppers and onions have been cooking for a couple of minutes. I'm about to turn the heat down just a little bit. You want to do the peppers and onions until they start to soften and then add your garlic in. Again, you could get away with a couple of cloves of garlic. I think I used 5. We're going to stir that around. Always watch your garlic when you've got it in oil. You don't want it to burn. If it starts to get brown, then you've gone a little too far, and that's not good for your meal. It makes everything taste burnt. Now is a good time to add in a little bit of salt. The salt's going to sweat the moisture out of those vegetables, and they'll start to soften even more. And I usually go in and add a little pepper when I add the salt too. I do have some Italian seasoning I'm going to add in a few minutes, but we're going to wait just a few minutes for that. And my sausage sounds like it is really cooking, so I'm going to turn the heat down on that. And we're going to get in here and we're going to flip them over. And you see why I use that cast iron skillet, because I like when it gets nice and brown on the sausages. And if your sausages don't get finished at the same time as your peppers and onions, it's not a big deal, because we've got to add some other ingredients to the peppers and onions before we add the sausage back in anyway. I started both of these out on a medium-high heat. Now I've got them both down on about a medium heat. I will probably crank the peppers and onions back up just a little bitty bit here in just a couple of minutes, because I'm going to add in some liquid, and we want that liquid to be able to cook off. You can see that our peppers and onions have cooked down quite a bit. They're not taking up as much room in the skillet. The onions have wilted really well. The peppers are going to cook a little bit longer, but they'll cook in the sauce or in what we're making. So I want to show you what we're adding next, and this is farro. Farro is a grain. It's very nutty. It's really hearty. It's full of protein, great source of fiber. It's really good for you. You could use rice in this skillet. You could even use pasta if you had to, but I really challenge you to try to get out of your comfort zone and start trying some grains. Whole grains are really exceptionally good for you, and farro is my favorite, and it makes this meal so delicious. This is what it looks like when it's rinsed, so you give it a rinse. This is 2 cups of farro. We're going to pour that into the peppers and onions. Excuse me, sorry. We're going to give it a little stir to get it coated with the oil. And then we're going to throw in a can of diced tomatoes. I really like fire roasted tomatoes in this recipe, but they didn't have any at the store when I looked. I can't believe it either, but they didn't. So I just used regular diced tomatoes. You can use some that have like celery and garlic and onion seasonings if you want, or just plain tomatoes are fine as well. All right, I'm gonna add some Italian seasoning. If you don't have Italian seasoning, you could add just a little bit of oregano instead. Probably about, I don't know, maybe about a tablespoon of the Italian seasoning. Hang on, let me check my sausages because they're getting really brown here. All right, so now it's time for me to turn this off. My cast iron, like I said, it holds in that heat, so it's gonna keep right on cooking even when I turn it off, and I've got some really dark pieces, so we don't wanna let it go too far, but that color is flavor. When you're cooking, color is flavor. So don't be afraid to brown your meat. Turn that off. Okay. Now I have a couple of cups of broth. You can use vegetable broth, chicken broth, or beef broth in this recipe. It doesn't matter. I personally like beef broth, but I didn't have any, so that's vegetable broth. So we're gonna stir this around here. I like to try to go with a low sodium broth or use broth that I've made myself because I can reduce the salt level. Sometimes the broth is really salty, and if you're salting every layer of your food, then you're just going to get too much sodium in there, and it's going to mess with the taste. Now, I'm going to leave this for now. Remember, we turned the heat back up just a little bit, so it's going to try to come to a boil. I'm going to put a lid on it and let it come up. And then we're going to simmer it for a little while because that farro is going to have to cook. And it'll cook like rice, so it's going to take us a little while. It'll take us about 20 to 30 minutes to get that cooked. We're back. You can see that we are cooking down quite nicely. Although my farro is not as tender as I would like for it to be. So I'm gonna add, you know I don't like to waste anything, so I took the chicken broth measuring cup and added a little water to it and added it to the tomato can so that we can have some water added with extra flavor. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put our nice brown, maybe a little extra brown, but that's okay, sausage back in here and mix it all in, and that nice sausage flavor is going to get boiled in with the farro as it finishes up. and the house smells like a carnival, and we're all gonna be fat and sassy here in just a few minutes. So about 5 more minutes maybe on this, and then we'll check the salt and pepper content, see if we need to add a little more Italian seasoning or anything to it, and we'll be ready to eat. Oh, that smells so good, doesn't it, Alana? Smells like a carnival. So you'll see that my farro is plumped up. Farro is gonna have a little bit of a chew to it, so it's not gonna be completely soft. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. Almost all of my liquid has been absorbed. Earlier I tasted it, added a little more salt, a little more pepper, and a little more of the Italian seasoning. And you see how gorgeous that looks? It's gonna be so tasty. So I'm gonna put this whole pan on our table. We're just gonna scoop it out family style, eat it with some buttered bread. If I was feeling really froggy, I'd make a salad, but I'm not feeling really froggy tonight. I did chop up some fresh parsley, so we're just gonna garnish with a little bit of that. And there's our salad on top. Alana will thank me for not making her eat a salad tonight. So we have our sausage, peppers, and grain skillet, also called the carny skillet. See you next time.